what I've been doing is kind of cleaning up my studio. I've got a bunch of clay out in my trunk and I can't get it out. Okay, that's a long story. I'll tell it to you some other time. So what I've been forced to do is to clean up my studio just a little bit. There are some things that I do that might be helpful to other people. So the first one is this wedging situation. This right here is a piece of hardy backer board, and as you can see, it is kind of thin. It's probably 3/8 of an inch thick. And what I do in order to wedge and have something to sort of push against as I'm, rolling this clay around, is I'll put a small bat right here on the back of my splash pan, and then I can, hang on, I need 2 hands for this. I can push this right up against that, and then the force that I use to, as you're wedging your clay, and I can't do that just with one hand, but that allows you to push up against that bat and your board won't go sliding off. People ask me questions about how I do stuff, like recycle, and like what kind of a stool do I use, and do I have a whatever. And so the stool is something that a lot of potters have a problem with because they may have a back issue, or the height of the stool maybe doesn't match the height of the wheel. I just set it on bricks just to raise it up just a little bit so that I can use this mechanic stool with it. Now this mechanic stool is on wheels, and these are not the wheels that came on it. The mechanic stool came from Harbor Freight, and I don't think it was very expensive. I think it was $25 or $30, and the wheels that came on it were very cheap. These are not the wheels that came on it, but the wheels that came on it basically fell off. This piece of this bottom part right here isn't very thick. That is, it's not very substantial, and so when these things came loose, and I didn't realize they had come loose, but all of a sudden the thing quit rolling around, and there were ball bearings all over the floor. So I knew something was wrong. Started looking for the problem. So I found it and realized that the wheels were pretty bad, and so I went and bought these. You're limited to what kind of wheels you can put on it because of this thing right here. The stem has to go through the hole that's in that piece of metal, unless you want to make the hole bigger. If you've got the tools to do that, you can make the hole larger, and then maybe reinforce them with some big washers or something, and then put some real hulking wheels on there if you want. Just don't get the kind that have to have hubcaps, okay? Because then you'd be too tall for the pottery wheel. So these wheels are a little bit better than the ones that came on it. These went bad, and these are 2 wheels that I have just recently replaced. I think they were actually defective when I bought them, because since I replaced them, I'm realizing that the thing works a whole lot better than it did before. So anyway, that's, and this stool, probably the guys out there are familiar with these stools, because most people that work on cars know what these are. Every mechanic has one in their garage, but I'm looking for the lever. It has a lever. Put it around here. Whoa. Okay. The stool goes all the way down to about maybe 18 inches high, and then this lever, and you can raise it up quite a bit. See, it went from down here to up here where this grease stops. So for $30 plus 5 wheels at $2, so $10 for wheels, and for $40 you've got a pretty good stool. And what I do is fold up a couple of towels. The seat isn't real. The seat is probably, well, it's padded when you first get it. And then shortly after you've used it a few times, the foam inside the seat just goes flat. So I put a couple of towels on here just to be nice to myself, and it's perfectly adequate. I can roll across the floor to back up a little bit and grab tools, or turn the radio on, or get up close to the wheel if I need to. So this stool has worked out pretty well. I also have my stand-up wheel on dollies. I have these little triangular, I don't know, they're called dollies, but they're kind of like casters. So there's 3 wheels on each. Here's one of these dollies, these triangular dollies with nothing on it, so you can see what it looks like. I bought these at Harbor Freight, and they're not expensive. But if you need to, like, I couldn't build anything big enough to go under 3 legs of a pottery wheel, so it would take up too much room, but I needed something that was kind of compact, and this did the trick, and so I keep some of those around in case I need those. I keep a few furniture dollies in my studio. This kind with the carpet on it comes from Harbor Freight, but these, like this is the bottom of a cabinet, that the cabinet part is gone, and I just kept the bottom because it has casters on it, and that's handy for stuff. These my son built for me, and they're wonderful. They have this little top thing on them, and I can put stuff on here and roll it around. So these are very handy. Also, I have I used to collect my scraps of clay in large containers, like in a 5-gallon bucket, and then do 5 gallons of reclamation all at the same time. And it becomes, it's overwhelming. So these are my throwing buckets. These are those cheap little Easter and Halloween buckets that you can get during certain seasons at the store. And so when I have a bucket that the slip gets too thick to use for throwing, I just set it aside and get out another bucket. So like this is too thick. So it's time to let this one evaporate, and I'll just start a new bucket that's about the same size. And when it gets down or evaporated far enough and it's thick enough not to run off of the hardy board, I will just get another piece of hardy board, and I would show you. I will just take another piece of hardy backer board, and this little ladle has some holes in it to let some of the watery stuff go through. But I take this out, put it on here, and I just keep loading this up until it's in danger of running off the edge. And so basically what you saw me wedge at the beginning of this video was from a couple of these buckets. So if you do I would do this whole thing, but I'm not going to do that for the video. But this shows you what I've done for reclamation with the hardy board, and I will take, as this dries, and I keep it inside the studio now. I didn't used to. I used to take it outside and try to keep the bugs out of it, and that doesn't work very well, so, because we live in a swamp. So as it dries, I will take this little plastic putty thing, spatula or whatever, and I will just raise it up and move it to another spot. What happens is the hardy board will get sort of saturated in one spot, and you can move it over to a dry spot, and it'll get it'll suck the water right out of that clay in no time flat. And you just wedge it up, let it sit probably, well, that stuff over there, I only had that after I could wad it all up and wedge it a little bit. I put it in a plastic bag and let it sit overnight. But it's smooth enough now to use, and it's stoneware with speckles in it, so it's got a little bit of texture to it, not much, but it's smooth enough to throw right now the way it is. But you can let it sit for as long as you want. Some people say you need to do it for 2 weeks, but I've never on purpose deliberately had to leave it that long. So I wanted you to see this. This has been sitting here for a little while, and all I have to do on this reclaim is just move it to another spot, and this wet spot will dry. Let me set this down. So in just a little while, this will be good to wedge up and let sit overnight. So just usually I have more than this sitting out here, but I did this just for the video a little bit ago. So, but it doesn't really matter. Just do whatever amount you feel like you can handle at one time. Find something that, now well, let me tell you what the problem is first. Problem is down here where my pedal is for my wheel. This is my pedal right here. Let me put my foot on it right there. And I've got my water bucket sitting up on 2 cinder blocks, and I reached for it over here because I'm not long enough. I would put it up here on the back of my splash pan, but I can't reach that when I'm throwing. So I have to put mine closer where I can reach it. However, I'm dripping between here and my splash pan. See, here's where my wheel is, and here's where my water bucket is, and I've got drips galore down there. It's just a mess, and I have to clean it up every once in a while. But I kept an eye out for this. I don't know what this is. It looks like it might go to a car wheel, and then it looks like something that might go on top of a stove. But anyway, it's real handy. So I can put tools here, and it sticks out further than I can still operate my pedal with my foot, and I can still reach this without much interference right here. Plus, I can put my sponge there, I can put my throwing stick there, I can put ribs, here and there and everywhere. I put my throwing sticks down, like that. So that is very handy. If you can find something that's circular with a hole in it that you can put over your bucket to kind of keep things a little more tidy. You might call that a drip pan, basically. Okay, next little trick is over here. Let's go to this wheel, and this is my, let me move my drink here. I hope I don't knock that over. This is where I keep my my Giffen grip. I love this thing. But I showed you a video one time where I took these placemats and put them behind here, and I've got 3 of them. And I had been just putting them back here to catch the drips, but the problem was, so we're doing problems and solutions. The problem was this, and you'll hear this in just a second. This was the problem. I'd have them, now it won't do it. I'd have these things and one of them would get out of whack and it'd start rubbing up against the wheel and making noise, and the noise was a little bit distracting. So I think I may have solved the problem, and I've only tested this out one time. I keep these little pool noodles cut down to size right here on the edge of the splash pan so that I can lean up against it without getting into it. So I put a slit right here on the edge of each one of these. And so what I'm doing is I'm sliding, rotate that just a little bit. I bet you didn't see that. Let's see. So what I'm doing is sliding the end of this placemat. It's a plastic placemat that I got probably at the dollar store. And it kind of holds that one holds that one in place, and then over here, same thing. Kind of rotate that back a little bit, and I've got that in the slit. So I've parked it in the slit, and then I took 2 placemats and I stapled them together, and that holds those 2. Now this one I didn't staple, and the reason is I have a mirror over here, and I like to look at the profile as I'm trimming in order to see the profile of something up here. I have a mirror right here, and if I pull this over too far, then I can't see my mirror. So I've left this one free, not attached to anything, and that seems to be working now. But this keeps the staple right here, and this little slit right here with the noodles, that is keeping this from making noise. So let me get them arranged. So you have to poke it down. So let's see. Okay, I've got this one in the spot, and this one could go behind this, I suppose. Let's do that. And that would kind of keep it under control, maybe. All right, so, okay, so let's turn it on and see if it makes any noise. No, it's beautiful, and it's just silent. I don't hear any of this or any of that. So this works pretty good. It's flimsy and it's movable, and it didn't cost me much, you know. I mean, geez, you get a package of these, like 4 or 6 of them for $1. And then the noodles, everybody has noodles because they're just handy to have. I even have a noodle in the car, in the garage, to keep my car door from banging up against a shelf when I open it. So they're good for a lot of things. So another trick I use is I had these little salsa bowls, and they were perfectly round on the bottom. And so I poured plaster in them, and this is, so I've got like a little half round thing, and this is what I use. It's one of the things that I use to make sure that my mugs and tumblers and things are round. After I put a handle on, sometimes it gets out of round. And so this is something that I keep a couple of these because I break them. Let's take this and turn it upside right, and then so after I stick the handle on the thing, I just put that in there and make sure, and it's twisted around just a little bit and make sure that I've still got a round top on it. And this will work for tumblers and things that are that size. And also I use chucks, and that is to trim things. Something over here that I keep handy. Here's a chuck that I can use upside this way or upside this way. It just depends on what the size of the thing you're trimming. So this is made out of stoneware, and I've left it pretty heavy and thick. And the reason is, when you lift something, when you put something on the wheel, on your Giffen grip, and you've got your little grips up here, well, your center of gravity changes because you've got something that you're trimming up here. So you need something with some substantial weight to keep it from just tumbling over. So that's helpful to have a couple of these. So I've got that one, and this is a little thing that it's like a hard plastic deal, and I can also stick that down into a cup to make sure that it's round. That helps sometimes, depending on the shape of whatever it is. So I've got chucks in different sizes for different things. Here's one for in case I have to trim something little, like a knob on top of something or whatever. And then I've got this one also back here. This is pretty handy. I've used this quite a bit. So I bisque fire them. I make them myself. Here's another one. This one isn't it's cool because the bottom of it isn't finished into anything. It's just flat. But they're very handy, and I've used them a lot. So I make them myself. I bisque fire them, and they work perfectly well like that. Okay, another thing that helps me save money and not be wasteful and also recycle stuff. And that is, and I discovered this when I was teaching school, because you could use an entire roll of paper towels in like the first half of a class, because students just can't stand to have their hands dirty, and they roll off about 6 pieces of towel before they quit, and they just wad it up and throw it all away. If you take newspaper, not the slick stuff, but the just regular newspaper, and tear it into quarters, like a whole newspaper sheet, if you spread it out, will give you 4 pieces of newspaper that's about this size. And so if you keep a bucket in your studio and I would say a plain bucket, or a small plain bucket, because you're going to want to empty it frequently, especially if you have other people using your studio. But just plain water. This is not throwing water. This is just water to wash your hands in. And you can keep some paper towel, not paper towels, newspaper towels nearby. And that way you can instruct yourself or your students to wash their hands off and especially before they go to the restroom, or to handle the door handles or any other of the tools or things in the studio. Because if they don't clean their hands off even a little bit, then you're going to have you're going to have a really, really dirty studio that's got junk all over it, and that's not good. It doesn't look good, and it isn't good for you. So keep some plain water. I put a lid on it to keep it from evaporating too quickly. It just reduces the moisture in the air, because I have an air conditioner that's trying to take the moisture out of the air because we live in a swamp. Okay, so the newspaper and the small bucket of water for cleaning your hands. That's a good thing. Okay, there are my aprons that I discovered and wadded up in different places. Really, I have not cleaned this studio, done a good job cleaning in a long time, and I still have to do the floor. So I'm a believer also of, here, let's turn this off. And turn it off. I'm a believer in saving your back. Like I said, I'm not very big and I'm not very strong. And so anything that I can put on wheels, I do. I have a floating island here. This thing that I'm tapping my foot on is my island that I'm holding my buckets on. Some of the buckets are elsewhere at the moment, but this thing, I've put a little shelf under there so I can have 2 tiers of buckets. So I've got the little 1.5 gallon buckets down there. I think that's 1.5 or 2 or something. And then I've got the big buckets up here. Being able to move it helps you clean and without killing yourself. Also, when I have clay that's opened and I'm using out of the bag, I have one of these ice chest things that I keep the clay in. And as you can see, it's empty because I can't get any clay out of the trunk. But I have it on top of a furniture dolly so that when it's full and I need to move it from one place to the other, I can just roll that around. And my son put this in for me this summer because I had been working out here. Well, I'd have to choose my days and work for, a short period of time. Sweat rolling into my eyes and everything because we live in a swamp. But this is great. Here, I'll show you. Okay, well, that's about all the little questions that I had for this video anyway. Probably all I can squeeze on here.